Hello, Year 11. Today we're doing about stopping distances. So here's the work folder, and today you just need to follow through the PowerPoint and answer a few questions that I'll ask you. Now, so let's get straight to it. Okay. Why does it take a plane longer to stop than a car? Hopefully, from last lesson, we've got an idea that the plane is a lot heavier. Or I should say the plane has much more mass. So remember, if something has more mass, it's more difficult to get them to stop. Okay, so now today is about car safety and stopping distances. And there are a few videos, so if you'd like to watch that video, please feel free. And this video too. So have a little watch of them and then come back to the PowerPoint. So, what affects the time it takes you to stop? What do you think? Pause the video, have a little idea, and then unpause it when you're ready to continue. Right. How do we think mass affects the stopping distance? And we mentioned this like at the start a few slides ago. Hopefully we understand that something that's got more mass will take longer to stop. So say a scooter versus a lorry. If you were going down the road at 30 miles an hour and both of you slam the brakes on, you should realize the scooter will stop first and the lorry will take longer to stop because the lorry has much more mass. Now, there are other factors that are affected as well. Other factors that affect how quickly you can stop too. So let's think about if you are in a car, on your bike, or whatever. What do you think is involved when braking? Well, let's say a person jumps out in front of you on the road. What do you have to do? First of all, you've got to spot them. Okay? Second of all, you've got to think about this hazard. Your brain has got to decide what to do. So there is a thinking time or thinking distance. So I could travel a few meters on the road before I hit the brakes because I have to think about it and I have to tell my body to push the brakes. And then there is the braking distance. So once I hit the brakes, that is the distance that is taken, the distance that I travel while the car is slowing down. So let's do a little diagram. I'll do it with my mouse. So here's my car. There's my car. And a person jumps out in front of me like that. Now, let's just say I spot the hazard immediately, but I travel this far, let's say 10 meters. 10 meters while I'm thinking. I'm using my brain, I'm thinking, I'm like, what on earth just happened here? Oh, I need to hit the brakes. At this point here, I hit the brakes. And then what happens is my car maybe takes 5 meters to slow down. And then I stop. Okay? So my thinking time and my braking time are two different things. So I should say the thinking distance and the braking distance. Okay. Now, these things can be affected by lots of different factors. So your thinking distance is affected by, first of all, how fast are you going? If you're going faster, the further you will travel. Even if it takes you 0.1 seconds to decide everything, which is pretty fast, which is way faster than average, you will, if you are going faster, you will still travel further in that 0.1 seconds if you're going, say, 100 miles an hour compared to 30 miles an hour. So that is why we have speed limits in certain areas as well, to sort of bring down the braking distance. How dopey you are, this can be a multitude of things. Say, tired, your reaction times go down. Drugs and alcohol, your reaction times go down. Being old, or having a careless attitude. I'm going to give you some. If you are given a question that says, name some things that affect thinking distance, think about if you've been in a car. It's much harder to concentrate in certain situations. For example, if you've got the music really, really loud, it can be hard to concentrate. If you're looking out your window, as guys usually do, at girls walking down the street, that is distracting them from the road, and that will increase their thinking distance if something happens. If you are on your phone, that will increase your thinking distance if something happens because you are distracted. So it doesn't just have to be drugs or alcohol. It can be tiredness. It can just be being distracted, looking at your phone, changing your music, changing the radio station, talking to your friend. This is also why you're not supposed to be on a phone call, because talking on the phone can increase your reaction time by up to 50%. Now, so that's your thinking distance. Generally, it's just common sense. If you think being in a car and having whatever it is distracts you, then it will. So obvious answers are fine, like having loud music. That is classified as a distraction. Bright sunlight in your eyes, that could be a distraction too. Okay, another thing. The next part is braking distance. These ones are more mechanical in terms of the answers. There's not as many different answers, but if you remember these, you'll get it right every time. Braking distance. Most importantly, well, two most important ones. How fast are you going? And how heavy your vehicle is. Okay, the faster you are and the heavy or the more mass your vehicle has, it's going to take longer to stop. Now, I'm sure you know that you've got to take your car in for an MOT every year. One thing they do in an MOT is they check your brakes. If your brakes are not working properly, you won't stop as quickly. Say if the brakes are slippy or they're broken, okay, it will take longer for your car to stop. And how good the grip is. Whether that is your tires are worn down, okay, or if it's icy or if it's raining or there's oil on the road, that affects your stopping distance too. The other factors that I talked about before, distractions. I didn't mention about bad visibility, so I mentioned sunlight, but you could also have fog, heavy rain and snow. Now, why do brakes get hot? Okay, when you brake, well, actually what you can do if you want to, rub your hands together and feel, you can hear me doing it here, feel that your hands get warm. The same thing happens in brakes. Brakes slow the car down using friction. And when two things rub together, friction is wasting all of that energy as sound and as heat. So let's go on to the next bit. So, when a force is applied to the brakes, work done by the friction force between the brakes and the wheel reduce the kinetic energy of the vehicle and the temperature of the brake increases. Large decelerations may lead to brakes overheating and or lost control. That is quite rare, but you might, in stuff like Formula 1 and races, and where you are in, say, like a competition and the brakes are being put through a very large amount of stress, you might see the brakes glowing. You could probably Google a picture of hot brakes and you will see the brake disc is actually glowing because it's so warm. Now, this could be a question they give to you in an exam, quite a straightforward one. It says stopping distances is the combined thinking and braking distance. So here's your speed, here's your thinking distance in meters. You can see the faster you're going, the greater your thinking distance is, and here is your braking distance in meters. Okay, you can see that your braking distance goes up a lot more as you go faster, and they might ask you to calculate the stopping distance. This is quite straightforward. All you have to do is add your thinking distance and your braking distance together to get the total stopping distance. If you'd like to quickly do that, pause the video, but it is quite straightforward. Okay, hopefully you've had a little look through and you understand that to get stopping distance, you add these two numbers together. So I'm going to do that. So you can see you'll notice that if you look around next time you're out driving or walking, generally in an area with houses and people, you'll have a speed limit of 30 miles an hour, which means that it takes 23 meters to stop about. Now, you'll notice that there are the flashy signs on your way to school. They will flash, and if they're flashing, the speed limit is reduced to this. The whole point is that the stopping distance is about halved to 12 meters. This is to keep children safe while they're going to school. And even if you are speeding just a little bit, your stopping distance goes up massively. Now, the problem happens is if you can't stop in time, you hit somebody, and if you hit someone at a certain speed, it becomes more likely to be fatal. So that is why we have speed limits that are much lower, closer to people's houses and where people are likely to be. But on the motorways, you can see the speed limits are much greater because people aren't allowed on motorways. Okay, so you're less likely to crash into a person, and if there is an accident, unless you crash into another car, it's less likely to be fatal. So if you click on this is about the crash stunt dummies, or whatever you want to call them. They use this to test on dummies. So have a little look. It's kind of like a link to the real world. Now I'm going to skip this because we've done this before. Remember, we did the ruler drop. We didn't have to do a stopwatch, but we dropped the ruler and we converted that to a reaction time. If you want to, you can try and do this. Start a timer. Try and get your timer to stop exactly on 1 minute and exactly on 2. How close to those were you? How close did you get? Now, I like to draw little mind maps, and for each one, I like to do braking distance, and then I want you to write the factors that affect braking distance. So, for example, mass of your car would be a factor that affects braking distance. Try and come up with as many as you can. Then I want you to do the same for thinking distance. What factors affect thinking distance? So I'll give you one: drugs and alcohol. Okay. Once you've done that, go on to the next slide, and you've got a task. This is very similar to a GCSE question that came up a few years ago. So a tree has fallen down in the middle of the road, and there was a picture. So a car comes up to the road and has to stop. Describe and explain the factors that affect this person's ability to stop. Okay, it's a 6 marker, but you don't have to go into full 6 mark detail just yet. Just try and consolidate everything you've learned or everything you've listened to so far into a 6 mark question. I would advise you to, so I'm going to go back a slide. I would advise you to break it into 2 categories. Say the stopping distance is this plus this, and then you could say, well, these are the things that affect braking distance, and these are the things that affect thinking distance. That would be a valid answer. Once you've done that, please email me your work, and then I will see you tomorrow. And that will be tomorrow, which is Friday, is the last lesson for the half term.